Hello, good morning. Thank you, Aapresid, for having invited me again to share my view of the cattle breeding sector. And thank you all for listening to my presentation and coming so early to this session. The title of the presentation defines, in a way, what I feel regarding what is coming up. And it's an important title, The New Age in Beef Cattle. To set the context, or at least my view of what's happening, the first thing I have to share with you is that the growth of the beef business in the world is amazing. It keeps growing and breaking records in volume and prices year after year. We'll see this in my next slide. There are two pillars underlying this growth. There are new consumers, new regions, new countries. In some cases, we even have to go and find where those countries are in the map because they have not been usual beef consumers, and especially not consumers for Argentina. We have Asia, China, of course, Southeast Asia, North of Africa, Middle East. Some countries, such as Israel, are major clients, but in general, there are new customers, new markets. And the second topic, more disruptive in terms of what had been happening in the beef market that had been affected by ideologies against cattle breeding that took advantage of the situation to have their own business, like products that were similar to beef or beef replacement, vegetable, multi-processed food, and even lab beef. Today they are in the third underground floor. I'm not being mean, I'm being realistic. There has been a new acknowledgement of the quality of animal protein. And this has been led by young people. If I say young people, imagine, I will turn 77 soon. Young 44, 45-year-old people are pushing the demand. They account for over 50% of total purchase in developed countries. Those consumers have found in animal protein not only beef, but also egg, poultry, meat, etc. What allows them not only to be healthy, but also fit. I was reading about that, and I said, oh, poor hens, you have to eat so many eggs a day. But this obviously affects all animal proteins, and it's really having an impact on the market and on consumption growth. I'm not saying this is just starting, but there is a new trend, a new wave that we did not expect some years ago. Within this context of demand growth, the offering will not be, supply will not be enough, and consequently, prices keep growing. We will see what is happening in connection with this. What is clear is that even though what I've said so far sounds great in terms of business development or demand or values, it is clear that they are not ready to give up what this new group of young consumers considers social responsibility. Today, they say, yes, this is what I want, I have good muscle, etc., and so on and so forth. But what is clear is that I want to know how my food is produced. I don't want production to affect those values that are key to me, and that, among other factors, include the following.
The first is security. After COVID, there was more awareness about diseases that can be transferred from animals to humans, and biosafety is a very huge topic. In addition to the animal kingdom, there are other diseases that have scourged production and beef supply, including the African swine flu, the foot and mouth disease, with unusual traits in the region where there is vaccination, a number of issues that warrant additional work and commitment, and the contingency plan that may be serious and foreseeable. And secondly, and I will put forward the 4 things that need to be complied with and that are most relevant. Secondly, there's animal welfare. They want to have beef, but they want at the same time animals to have been as happy as possible throughout their lifetime and to be slaughtered within a humanitarian context. The second has to do with the potential effect of production on the environment, and I do not need to repeat what has been said already and what we are doing to prove that we are not the evil guys, but part of the solution. And lastly, respect for human rights, including child labor, indigenous peoples, etc. So this is, well, a job that is to be done. It's very nice, but not easy, and it's accompanied by requirements that we need to meet. And 2, 3 things that I find are necessary for the government to undertake. The government is to act as the referee, not to play the match. But it is important that it will not play against us. And there, I would say, the job it has ahead of us to cause Argentinian beef to regain its position in international market is a huge task. And it has to be a private-public effort. But clearly, it's not a game to be played just by watching it. You have to actually play it. Of course, it is necessary to do away with barriers that may limit Argentinian beef competitiveness, either because of tariff, or entry cost issues, and last but not least, ensuring foreseeability. One of the big scourges that we have suffered in the past decades is that rules of the game have changed depending on the government in office. And therefore, we missed opportunities because we did not gain the necessary speed. I won't go into details because of time. I do want to tell you that this is a reflection of what has been happening in the international marketplace. The columns on the left, you see the columns on the left, the million tons or the thousands of tons in this case, because the figures are expressed in thousands. But 20 years ago, global trade would move around 7 million tons. And today, this is for 2024, 2025, surely we'll have 13.5 million, almost double that figure. And in the different colors show the regions where beef has been exported from different sources. And 90% of the global market growth is accounted for by Asia, North Africa, and Middle East. This is what I told you at the beginning of my talk. That region has grown exponentially. See, 20 years ago, it accounted for less than 25%, and now it's 2/3 of the global market. And when you look at that region in closer detail and analyze the pie chart, you will realize that China, which has been the great disruptive element in the international marketplace for the past 12 years, accounts for more than 40%. There are other countries, other consumers of that huge region, almost 60%, from countries to which we have no access, such as Japan and Korea, which for the region account for 17% as a whole. But then there are others within Southeast Asia, the Arabian Gulf, or the north of Africa, and so on and so forth. And I underscore Vietnam because it's the least imaginable to be present there, to have that volume. But in the region today, Vietnam accounts for 5%. 5% of 66%, that is 3.5% globally. It's a lot. It's really a lot. And there are other countries that you can see on screen and which I will not mention again. What is very important is to analyze, in addition to the growth in volume, the evolution in prices. It may happen that we gain volume because we are selling beef at too low a price. It may happen in Argentina, but not elsewhere in the world. We always play a different game, you know. I mean, he's making analogies with football, and we are playing a different tournament. Let's see the evolution in beef prices in current currency over the years. You will see that starting in 2010, there was a boom in terms of beef prices. I insist in current currency, and you will see what has happened over the past year and a half, after a number of black swans that affected global trade and global economy, how beef prices started climbing at a wonderful pace. I was waiting for July to be shown on. You have information until the first half 2025. Now, when expressed in constant currency and using the U.S. inflation rate as of June 2025, clearly we see we're witnessing the highest prices over the past 35 years. Not the highest, which took place in 2014, sorry. Back then, there was the entry of China with supply that was not prepared for that demand and for that vast growth. That's when we reached the peak in 2014. But before year end, we will surely exceed that value, and we will score the highest values in history.
Solo un comentario de China, porque lo mencioné.
China, 13 years ago, in 2025, imported 200,000 tons a year, and the consumption per inhabitant per year, including own production and imported beef, was 4.5 kilos times the 1,400 and something. Today, 2024/25, China is importing around 3.7 million tons, and consumption is, including own production and imported beef, almost 8 million kilos times 1,400 and something. That is, there has been an increase in 3.5 kilos per inhabitant per year. This is serious. I remember when people said, well, when Chinese start eating one beef, what will happen? Well, we are already exceeding that figure. It's 3.5 kilos. Look at the average for the past 35 years in constant currency and the prices we are witnessing over the past 15 years. And again, to show you how these black swans impact all of our business and our cows, see what happened when the African swine flu and COVID added up. Prices went down and plateaued and then went up following the onset of the vaccine. They dropped. Now they have recovered after the Russian invasion into Ukraine that gave a big blow onto the global economy. The war is still ongoing, unfortunately, but the world has already sort of accepted it and moved on. I pay a lot of importance to this pie chart because it helps us understand what are the opportunities if we do the right thing, and then we will talk about that. The first thing I want to show you is these two pie charts, which show the two leaders in what we might call, and apologies for what I will say, but to understand this, this goes well beyond my comment. This foot and mouth disease-free circuit without vaccination. It goes beyond multilateral or bilateral agreements, but it somehow defines those countries that are trading in this circuit to which we have no access today or to which access is limited. You will see that both Australia, the bottom pie chart, which is the second largest global exporter, and the USA, which is the fourth, where do they export their beef? The red color shows that 50% goes to, it's a kind of mustard color, goes to Southeast Asia. And China has almost 20%. Of course, the USA is part of NAFTA, but Australia is not. But notice 400,000 tons in the case of Australia, whereas we export 20,000. And you have to pay 36.4% cost on freight. But look at those pie charts. Almost 85% is distributed mostly in Southeast Asia, China, and NAFTA. And when we look at Brazil and Argentina, first and fifth in Argentina in terms of exports, yellow is the dominating color. There we will, we export to China. China accounts for 70% for us, 50% for them. Very little is exported to NAFTA and hardly anything to Southeast Asia. And the tons or the value per exported ton, they export at least to 50 or 70% higher in terms of value. And it's any kind of beef, tenderloin to cheaper cuts. So my comment is whatever effort we make to enter the circuit that we are not participating in today will not be worthless. And behind that, there will be a reward. One last concept. My comment is the following. Without exports, we have no future. I am tired of listening that consumption drops because of the budget cuts implemented by President Milei. Whereas if we look at figures over the past 6 decades, the consumption per capita over the past decades has dropped 7 kilos per inhabitant per decade. So this is not President Milei's budget cuts. It's something different. Back then, consumption was over 80 kilos of beef and 12 kilos poultry and swine. Whereas if we look at what happens 6 decades later, it's 65 kilos poultry and swine, and only 50 kilos, a bit below, maybe 48 kilos of beef. Global consumption, of course, has increased from 90-something to 112 and maybe heading for 115, but species have changed. Consumption has changed, and my comment regarding the future of exports is this. At this pace, and I don't think this will change because this is something structural. In 2035, we will be speaking here 10 years from now, maybe bolder, but I will be here. We will be consuming 42 kilos. Same, 2.2 million more inhabitants, and I do not want to keep on reading news indicating that consumption has dropped because of budget cuts. It has dropped because structurally that's the path that things are taken. If I were to bet on something, I think that there will be 10 or 8 kilos more consumption on swine meat that will be tilting the scales on the other side. So we need to focus on exports. And these are all the things that we need to do in order to materialize those exports. Sanitary access where we don't have, lower access costs, reducing tariffs. To give you two examples, for example, the USA, because of the quotas, we have 20,000 tons. The next buys 36.4. Australia, which is a huge competitor today in the international marketplace, 400,000, 380,000 tons, pays nothing. So we have to increase the quota or do something. Or in the second example, I don't want to bore you with this, we have a slaughterhouse for Japan in Patagonia, but it has no beef. And when the beef is received there, there is a 38% tariff to be paid, plus cost and freight, freight that will take 35, 40 days, whereas Australia pays 21. It will be paying 9 in the next few years, and it's just far. The distance between Australia and Japan is much shorter. So unless we pay attention to this, we can have the best beef ever, but will be too expensive and no one will buy from us. Religious rights, you have to understand that part of that global growth in demand is driven by Muslim countries. So we are very well prepared to face the kasher challenge, but we do not have that same flexibility for the halal requirements, which are the future. So there we will have to change our mindset, standardize, and ensure product quality, which has to do with quality certification. This will be discussed by Sergio. And then to answer to new demands, a couple of comments, and I will close my presentation. We have lost 3.4 million heads over the past 2 years, based on data regarding the first foot and mouth disease campaign in the 4 major regions in Argentina. You see the ones that lost the least number of heads and the most number of heads. At the end of the day, if you divided the country longitudinally, we would say that the East lost relatively little, whereas the West lost a lot. We are talking about 12 and up to 13% of the cattle stock. That is, there was a bad climate for all, but terrible for the northwestern arid and semi-arid region. You see there the market share and in production. The center is still mastering 70%, but let me remind you that it was almost 80%. So agriculture told us, look for other sectors because I have to plant soybean. And lastly, and this is for what is coming, do have it into account, if supply does recover, which is not the case so far because of the withholdings, there will be a drop in supply in 2026, 2027. We have not gone into the process yet. The figures that we saw before related to calves. And look at this. This is the evolution in the cow stock since 2004. That's the farther in the past that we can go. And there was a huge drop in stock in between 2007 and 2009. There was a recovery to the year 2018. There was a drop again, a significant drop in the number of heads. So we'll see what would happen in 2018. Well, the Argentinian government negotiated a significant market openness, including exports to China and meat and bone. And in the past, they would say, well, maybe I will give them another opportunity when cows were a little bit thin, but now they will export them just as they are because China paid well for that. The good news is that there was a drop in that figure, but there was an exponential growth in the calf-cow ratio, which shows an improvement in reproductive efficiency. I thought I would never witness these figures, 70%. I am witnessing, and I'm heading for 75. So let's move forward, and we'll make it. Final comments. Of course, changes in public policies have given us hope, at least in terms of the long term and foreseeability, by eliminating restrictions on imports. There is a strong demand both within the domestic market and for the export market. The impact because of the drop in stock, which envisions a drop in supply, an increase in restocking and slaughtering weight over the next 2 years. And to me, the trigger is that there will be credits at rates, conditions, and repayment schedules that are reasonable. These are not present as yet. When the government took office, money we thought would be allocated to the productive system, but that's not the case so far. So we have to sell our cows as they are. So a big limitation to recovering stock is the lack of lending. There is a couple of good signals ahead, but this has to increase many times. Secondly, we need to face informality. We understand that there is a lot of informality, taxation, which is cumbersome, but I don't know of any country that grows with informality, or any country that is efficient or big, being informal or having an informal economy. So unless we respond to that we won't grow, and we have talked about demand. With that, I finish my presentation. Thanks very much for your patience. And I hope I haven't gone past the time allowed for my presentation. So I think I have done okay. Thanks very much.
Le cedemos la palabra a Sergio Barrera.
We'll now give the floor to Sergio Barrera, Azul Natural Beef Manager. He's been in the market for 13 years. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank Aapresid for their invitation. My presentation is simpler. It's not about the global market, but we'd like to tell you that Frigorífico Azul is offering a different product demanded by the world. We're going from a plate backwards. Today, people are demanding beef with desirable marbling. They pay for that, and we want Argentina to offer that differential value in the world. To achieve this, we need producers to produce that kind of cattle, that kind of product, and we believe that by encouraging producers, we will have more people joining this trend. This is what the world is demanding, and we believe Argentina should have a differentiating value, should not offer beef as a commodity, because Brazil obviously has a larger volume, and I think the marbling is giving us great results as differentiated beef. We are located in the city of Azul. The company is owned by Tomás Simnis and Alejandro Dujo. They know a lot about the industry and about the cattle breeding sector. We have two very big feedlots supplying 35% of the slaughterhouse. One is at Trenquelauquen, and the other one is in Carlos Tejedor. It's called Segeo. And in all, our projection is around 120,000 heads per cycle. How do we get people to produce a different product? We give information back about our slaughtering operations. For every animal, we measure the marbling, and with that, besides our contract, besides the traditional slaughtering operations, what we do is assess quality. That quality happens 24 hours after slaughtering, and with that information, we provide economic results to producers as well as information about genetics. Argentina invests a lot in genetics. We're pioneers. We produce very good animals, but we do not have information about what happens after this stage. So we have very good genetics, very good bulls, but we don't know what happens with slaughtering. So we generate a link with producers. The animal has to be an Angus animal weighing over 480 net kilos. It's got to be a feedlot animal. And what we do is work a lot, focus a lot on animal welfare. When the cattle leaves our field, we want animals to be treated correctly, and transportation is very important too. All slaughtering companies are really focusing on this because animal welfare is key. Because a steer that has been beaten during transportation generates losses for producers. Same thing with vaccines. This is something we have been working on a lot. Vaccines are very important. We have to train people working at the plant. Those vaccines cannot be seen at first sight. But when you open up the cuts, you see that, and that product cannot be exported. And we want to partner with producers. We need the product to be Angus, heavy, over 100 days in the pen. So we need to build that relationship with producers to get these results. In our bonuses, we measure several parameters. The weight has to be above 135, marbling has to be above 2. So this graph may seem confusing, but as the weight goes up and marbling goes up, this percentage goes up too. It's a scientific measurement because this is done by a piece of equipment. Marbling is very important, starting at 2. Why 2? Because that's when you start to see fat tissue. The closer to 5, the more the fat volume. Color is also very important. We measure beef quality considering beef color and fat color. This is why we don't want animals to be stressed. This is why we focus on animal welfare. The white fat is what the world demands. The weight determines a good ribeye area, and that ensures that the product you're selling to a restaurant in Singapore will have a certain level, always above the average. In our plant, the average is 150 kilos, the carcass. When we measure ribeye area with our scanner, we determine quality data. We measure marbling percentage, and we no longer have to assess things visually. This is done by a piece of equipment that has been tested, so there's no arguing there and no errors. The yield grade measures the beef external fat ratio. We don't want the animal to have fat in the external part, the outer part. During the last months of gestation, the cow has to be fed correctly. The steer has to be fed correctly. This generates eventually what we call marbling. The yield grade measures exactly that. We want little fat outside and a lot of fat inside. You can see that very clearly here. Yield grade goes from 1 to 5. Ideally, we should have 2/3 at the most. You see the external fat layer with a higher yield grade. in a 2 or 3 yield grade, the rib eye is perfect, but if we exceed that, we need to grant discounts because there is too much exterior fat. This is, I'll go faster, okay. We measure animal by animal. Animals have to be tagged. They have to be Angus animals. So we take a look at the quality, and this is information we give back to producers, animal by animal. So when you work with breeding, with animals that you buy or that you have in your fields, you need this information. So we want producers to keep buying animals that have certain characteristics that will lead to good marbling. And basically, I'm sorry if I've not been clear enough, but what we want to achieve is for producers to have the animals the world is demanding. And we need to plan for that, and this is why we're doing this work. Thank you very much to both of you, and there's time for questions now. Could you please talk about prices in the short term from here to March? And have 2 more questions. And what can you say about the impact of reduced exports of steers? Well, I would say prices, if we get into the withholding process, and I think that's where we're heading, then you'll go back to breeding. You will stretch the time during which the animal is in the productive process, and supply will go down, especially in the first time. So if supply goes down, prices will go up. Traceability, I would say that after this presentation, it's clear that if we do not meet the demand, if we do not provide trust and accurate information about the processes, this will not happen. And I can't remember your third question. Withholdings. Well, steers have 5% withholding. The exchange rate that went up almost by 16% had a larger impact than withholdings. And today steers account for 50–60% of total export. It's 1.5%. If it goes down, all the better, but it will not really change the business. There's a question for Sergio. In your relationship with producers, slaughtering plants, with your discounts, bonus programs, if you find a product that can be improved in terms of marbling, beating, vaccines, etc. The fat marbling topic, well, I understand that you need a full cycle because you need to raise the steer from the beginning, but in terms of beating, caring for the animals during transportation, do you think that you're being able to raise awareness among the customers you have been working with for a year and a half? I don't know when your program is starting. That's my other question. When did your program start? And are you seeing any changes? Are customers, those who sell the animals to you, really changing in terms of quality? In terms of animal welfare, and I think this is what you are asking, the correction happens quite quickly because you correct for your next shipment. You make corrections so that your next shipment will do better, because if there are non-conformities, because animals are being beaten, or maybe in the truck, the floors are not the right floors. We have been working on this for 5 years. We try to provide training to people working in the field, but the responses can be seen quite quickly, unlike genetics or quality, where things take longer. This is a question for Victor. The importance of growing in alternative markets is clear. Now, based on your experience, what risk are we running when depending so much on China? Well, you've asked the questions to the wrong guy. I never see issues, problems. I see opportunities. China has really changed our lives because it's giving us the opportunity to take the cows on vacations to the field, and this implies something very important. The challenge is to become more similar to Brazil and to get into the new markets. For example, Indonesia, 300 million inhabitants that are buying beef that already account for 7% of that market and who want to buy more beef. And if we give them halal beef, they will buy even more. And we can keep adding customers. So rather than seeing China as a client because it's just one client, I see that as a great opportunity. Thank God and thank Chinese people. But if we are able to grow in other markets, and we should do that, that's even better. But I don't see that as a problem, but as an opportunity. This is a question for Sergio. Without getting into a competition, what calls my attention is that you're working with Angus only. Why? When I see Lima Angus has a top price, do you work using this with Lima Angus? We work with Angus because this is what is demanded by the world. This is what our international customers demand. We do not have international certification for E-Mangoes or Hereford or other associations. So far, we're focusing on this beef that is demanded. We do not have much experience with E-Mangoes. We have not been able to achieve good marbling. Steers are very good. We are buyers at Cañuelas. We have bought E-Mangoes, but we have not had the results we were looking for. But that's maybe because we have few animals from that breed. Sergio, what results have you had when implementing these policies? What has been the response in terms of discounts? Well, we have been doing this for a year. We have been able to get closer to producers. We have achieved partnerships, and there is more trust because now we have a machine taking measurements. We are the only ones that are giving information back to producers. So this has generated good relationship, and we have generated better quality beef. I have a question myself. Victor, when you talked about price difference between the U.S. and Australia as compared to Brazil and Argentina, how much is due to beef quality and how much is due to competitiveness of the country?
It's a combination of things. It's difficult to break down, but it's the sum of multilateral negotiations that have taken place throughout the world in the past 20, 25 years. To us, our Mercosur, were different. The best example is Chile, which has 160 free trade agreements. We just have a Mercosur and one with Mexico, where slaughterhouses are closing. So we haven't done well in terms of foreign policy. But I give a lot of importance to what Sergio has mentioned, because Australia and New Zealand are clear examples. For the past 20, 25 years, they have paid and encouraged intrinsic beef quality. So reaching the high marbling niche and ensuring good quality has a sustainable base in objective typification processes. And I hope that others will follow suit so that this will be a reality. What we do replicates what is done in Australia. The machine has been imported from Australia. The parameters used have been taken from Australia. So there is knowledge already out there before it is brought to Argentina. Well, thanks very much. We have run out of time. We want to thank Victor and Sergio and also you for your presence. Thank you.